Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Comstock. Most people call me Catfish. I'm the Director of Search Engine Optimization for BusinessOnline, and I'm very happy today to be presenting this webinar in conjunction with our partner, seoClarity, in particular the CEO, Mitul Gandhi, who will be with us later in the presentation to also talk about the topic, which today is the new changes to Google and specifically the keyword unavailable or term not provided issue, in which Google is obfuscating keywords level data in terms of understanding which keywords are driving organic traffic to websites. So the presentation today is actually going to be a joint presentation where both Mitul and I will talk about the recent changes and how we feel that those changes are going to be affecting the way that we report on SEO and the way that we execute on SEO going forward. So specifically, the agenda today will be first to cover what I was going to talk about in my presentation recently at the seoClarity first annual user conference and how that changed based on the September 23rd Google update. And we'll talk a little bit about what that update was and specifically how it affects everything else that we're going to talk about in the presentation, which includes how we used to measure SEO performance, what changed in that KPI set as a result of the update, and how we measure performance going forward. And then from there, I'll turn it over to Mitul, and he'll be able to dive deeper into the changes and specifically how seoClarity is at the forefront of being able to take the changes that recently occurred and be able to continue to provide accurate reporting about SEO performance going forward. So having said that, let's first dive into my presentation at the first annual seoClarity user conference, and specifically what I was going to talk about. I had intended to talk about understanding negative SEO traffic changes, and in particular, using seoClarity as a tool to understand different sets of keywords and different sets of pages and their changes over time in terms of organic traffic performance, and trying to correlate those changes to actual ranking changes. So in other words, what we wanted to understand was whether or not the difference in the traffic numbers that we were seeing was a direct result of actual changes in SEO performance, or was it in fact as a result of changes to the overall volume for the keywords that were driving traffic to those pages. And the reason that that's important is because that determines where you're going to prioritize resources in terms of addressing any ranking changes that you may have observed over the time period that you're reporting on. And in an enterprise situation or in a situation where you have a client or your own company where you have thousands of keywords, that can be a very important task because oftentimes there are not resources to address every keyword ranking that changed over the course of a given time period. So you have to be judicial in how you prioritize those resources, and my presentation was going to dive deep into the process of how to go about doing that. Well, unfortunately, as a result of the changes that Google made on Monday, September 23rd, there is no more keyword level specific data that can be analyzed to make that determination, with the exception of that data that is found in Google WEBMASTER tools, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. But at this point, we are moving to a situation where all search traffic going through Google will be routed to secure search, which blocks the referring data that analytics tools use to understand what keywords the person who's coming from Google had used for their search query. And so essentially all the keyword referrers that will be reported in the analytics tool will now be keyword unavailable or term not provided. And the result of that is that there will be no more ability to understand brand or non-brand related traffic, and also we won't be able to understand specific traffic as it relates to unique keywords. Again, the exception there being Google WEBMASTER tools, although that data set has certain limitations. So how we used to measure search engine optimization, which was sort of the crux of my intended presentation, was we used to talk about overall organic search traffic by engine and whether or not organic search traffic was rising or was declining, and specifically measuring year-over-year brand and non-brand totals to understand how well our non-brand segment was improving, and whether or not we had any issues with the brand-related keywords in terms of their rankings, and if we did in fact own all those rankings, how was brand-related traffic performing over time. And then understanding the year-over-year traffic by keyword tag. That's an seoClarity term, which is analogous to a keyword group or a keyword category. In other words, it's a collection of keywords that you're monitoring. Maybe they are associated to a particular part of the business or a particular part of the site, depending on how you set up your KPIs. Again, measuring all of these things that are on this list was typically how we used to measure SEO success, and all of these metrics were part of that KPI set. Given the recent changes, you can see that many of the things that were cornerstones of what we used to measure are now gone. And so the truth of the matter is although we have good solutions in place, and that's one of the reasons that we're very fortunate to have a forward-thinking partner like seoClarity, because both of our companies have recognized for some time that this was the direction that the search engines were headed in. So it doesn't come as a surprise to us that this event has taken place. But it does in fact make it impossible to have accurate numbers that we used to have that are specific to these metrics. So in order to approximate those metrics, we're going to be using different KPIs in addition to the KPIs that we still have left at our disposal. And so it's important to recognize again that nothing will ever be the same in terms of measuring SEO performance. So again, while we do have strong solutions going forward that are accurate when we look at trending data over the last few years, where we do have that keyword level data to look at in order to validate these assumptions, there's very strong trending there that supports our methodology. But at the same time, it's important to understand that these will be approximations in terms of overall performance, and that the level of granularity with which we used to be able to measure is no longer available. So there needs to be a shift in the focus of the conversation. We're talking not only about how we measure search and search performance, but how we measure search in context of multi-touch attribution, and understanding that for most people, especially in business-to-business situations, conversions result of multiple touches, multiple entrances by the same person or different people in the same company. So measuring the value of search goes beyond just a single last-click attribution model that's typically been used up until now. And going forward, seoClarity will be developing specific tools to help address those issues as well. We're also moving from strictly a data analysis situation to a data extrapolation analysis. Again, it's an approximation analysis based on known and proven trends. And so we're also going to need to understand that as we measure the value of SEO going forward, we need to attribute value beyond direct ROI with measurable traffic to things like branding and the number of impressions via the rankings that we're getting. Again, data that's found in Google Webmaster Tools. We need to talk about the value of improved findability of content to the users, and the ability to improve conversion rates beyond just sales, but micro conversions that are indicative of great user experience. We need to make sure that we understand that Google is often used as an internal search engine to our site, especially at the enterprise level where we may have thousands and thousands of pages. So understanding that brand-related traffic is often as good or should be considered in the same vein as somebody using our internal search engine, and then ensuring that we have our brand-related keywords mapped out to the most appropriate pages on the site from a user perspective, and that we've optimized those pages for those keywords. That becomes a central part of the value, even though the rankings may be the same. They may still be a #1 ranking. It's just the preferred landing page for that keyword has shifted to the desired user experience. And that's just not for brand-related keywords, but that's also for all related keywords. Establishing the preferred landing page as the highest ranking page for your keyword also has a significant value to a lot of companies, and that story also needs to be told in terms of attributing the overall ROI for search. In terms of the metrics that we're going to be using measuring going forward, Obviously, we still have the total organic search traffic by search engine, so that will be a critical metric, as it always has been. We'll look at the total traffic changes by URL. So we'll be starting to really dive deep into page level metrics and understand what's the total traffic that is associated to a particular page, and what are the different keywords that are associated to a particular page where there are rankings that have a propensity to drive keyword traffic, and is there a correlation there between keyword rankings and those changes, and traffic and those changes. And understanding that as part of our determination of performance success going forward will be a shift from previously concentrating primarily on keyword level traffic. Additionally, there is still keyword level data in Google Webmaster Tools. For most folks, it's limited to around 2,000 keywords. Later in the presentation, Mitul will explain why for seoClarity users that limitation is actually not there anymore, and so that's good news for those of us who are using seoClarity. But specifically, the other thing that seoClarity does, which makes the job for everybody much easier, is that it archives the Google Webmaster Tool keyword data, which typically only has a 90-day lifespan within the actual Google Webmaster Tools interface. So the seoClarity system saves us the trouble of manually pulling that data on a daily basis, and then puts it in an interface which allows us to analyze that traffic data and specifically analyze changes over time, which is going to be critical as one of the metrics that we use going forward to understand the success of our SEO campaign. And then certainly page rankings or keyword rankings, pardon me, will still be a big part of the way that we measure SEO performance, and probably, despite Google's wish for the contrary, search rankings will probably gain again in prominence in terms of a KPI for overall search success, and people will most likely expand the number of keywords that they're looking at in order to understand their performance, because they no longer have visibility to a lot of that long tail traffic via their analytics reports. So having said that, really the point of the presentation that I ended up giving at the seoClarity user conference was that despite the fact that things have changed, a lot of the KPIs, it's true, are no longer available, but the ones that are can be leveraged with a few new metrics that we in the past didn't concentrate as much on, and they can be used to get a really good sense and a trend of SEO performance, and can still measure the success of the campaign in such a way as to point to an ROI. Obviously, again, going forward, that analysis will be based a little bit more on extrapolation and trending than granular data that we've been fortunate enough to have in the past. But the good news is that with the Google Webmaster Tools data and the rankings and the page level data, we can still come to a solution that will give us tremendous visibility into SEO performance and still allow us to make data-based decisions to drive performance. And so, again, I'd just like to thank seoClarity for having me speak at the conference, and I'll look forward to turning the presentation over right now to Mitul and letting him dive into a little bit deeper into the changes that Google made and how seoClarity specifically is addressing those changes.
Thanks, Catfish, and thank you for everyone for listening in on this presentation. I just covered this same topic at the SMX East conference in New York, and it's really interesting what the feedback of the SEOs that I've been meeting has been. It almost feels a little bit like this little cartoon I put up where the Wile E. Coyote is trying to get Roadrunner. Well, of course, the Wile E. Coyote being Google, trying to throw down the anvil of encrypted search to make a Roadrunner burger out of us SEOs. SEOs have been reacting with everything from shock and awe at the news and to anger, just pure anger at why Google is doing this. But honestly, this should really not be a surprise for anybody who has been in SEO for any amount of time. Way back, almost exactly a year ago, I had made a presentation at SMX East, same venue that I'm in right now, about the growth of term not provided. And at that time, I had provided this example of a B2B site where it was last year, it was seeing already 73% of its traffic as not provided. It was always eventually going to get to 100%. And keeping this in mind, seoClarity has been working with BusinessOnline in developing the solutions that will help our clients transition and migrate without any interruption in their SEO activities. Today, we're seeing the B2B site that I referenced just on the previous slide at 95.3% of their total traffic being not provided. So it's a pretty significant issue. So let's take a quick look at what's changed. Really, if you're using a SEO platform, you're probably used to seeing a ranking report, something like this, with keywords, and for each keyword, you would have a search volume, rank, entrances, conversions, and so on. Search volume comes from Google AdWords. Ranking is from Google through scrapes and crawls. And then your entrances and conversions are either through Google Analytics or Omniture Site Catalyst, Adobe Site Catalyst, or your favorite analytics platform. Just to help everybody understand what's changed, well, nothing's changed when it comes to search volume or rank. No matter what platform you use, you should still be able to retrieve that. But what has happened is that your keyword level visibility into what traffic is being driven by what keyword and what conversions you're getting from that traffic is now gone. That changes a lot, because with the change in that data set, there is a tremendous amount that's been lost in terms of what SEOs can do. And Catfish covered quite a few of these, and this is just a quick compilation of the key things that we hear from our enterprise clients as to what they are really worried about with this loss of data. Things like keyword performance, but also identifying new keyword opportunities, brand versus non-brand analysis, head versus long tail, issues with keyword targeting that they may have been experiencing, or cause and effect reporting. Essentially, there's a tremendous amount of reporting structures that SEOs have put in place over the number of years that relies on keyword level data that is now just gone. So the initial knee-jerk reaction with intended or unintended consequences that we're hearing from SEOs and from other technology providers is we should just guess it. Also, maybe estimate it. This is really, really concerning for us as an SEO technology provider, is just taking some click-through rate curve and estimating your traffic at a keyword level, or applying a generic average order value and conversion rate to arrive at your conversion is not a good way to build your SEO program. In fact, it's extremely risky to use just wild guesses to make decisions on what keywords to focus on and where to prioritize your efforts, which is exactly why we put together this term not provided playbook. In conjunction with BusinessOnline and our enterprise clients, we've put together a step-by-step guide to how you can address this challenge and come out of it ahead than others who are less prepared than you. First, let's identify the new data sources. Catfish had alluded to this just before about Google WEBMASTER tools being an invaluable, absolutely invaluable tool moving forward for all SEOs to help you understand what the keyword traffic that you should be getting from each keyword is. Similarly, we also see Google AdWords as being an absolutely invaluable tool to help understand at a keyword level what your conversion rates are and what your average order value are. Instead of taking a generic conversion rate and a generic average order value across your entire site, what seoClarity is able to do is take the same keyword conversion rate and average order value on pay-per-click and apply it to your organic traffic that we collect from Google WEBMASTER tools, providing the only integrated solution that gives you the most accurate view possible of the data. Now, we've heard Google WEBMASTER tools have certain, limitations. The two limitations that we hear most often is it's limited to 2,000 queries, top queries, or that there's only 3 months historical data. Well, that's exactly what we've been working for the last year to help get around. And seoClarity's innovative integration with Google WEBMASTER tools means that for large sites, we can get up to 200,000 and more query data out of WebMaster Tools, and the data is stored forever. The data does not roll off because we scrape the data, crawl the data, collect the data, and store it in our platform forever. So having gotten around those issues, this data is now even more powerful than what you could get directly through WebMaster Tools too. Now, moving on from the data sources to metrics, it's really important to recognize that the new age metrics, the metrics that are going to define how SEO is tracked and measured, are no longer keyword level metrics. And in order to have a stable long-term solution for keyword not provided, we all need to be thinking about moving to page level analytics. Page level analytics has metrics, includes metrics such as the standard traffic to page, page conversion rate, and revenue. But also more importantly, there are new metrics such as bounce rate, on-page behavior, and page speed that all tie in to create that user experience, to help measure the user experience, which is so critical to the future of SEO performance. Now, that combined, leveraging this data source and these new metrics requires a new approach. SEOs who have been very focused on a keyword level will now have to think about very seriously about mapping their keywords so that every keyword has a page that is being optimized for that keyword, and creating that relationship and tracking that relationship between a keyword and the specific page that they want to rank. Only once this has been thought through and every SEO has had a chance to go through and do this kind of strategic thinking about the keywords and pages they have, can they start leveraging the analysis that we're helping our clients since for the last couple of years leverage. Instead of looking at keyword rankings correlated with traffic, the new age analysis in this new world of SEO will need page traffic correlated with targeted keyword rankings. And the good news is seoClarity clients have a patent pending visualization that shows them exactly how changes in targeted keyword rankings impact the performance of their pages. And this is going to replace any keyword level performance analysis that they were reporting on, and is the only solution to be able to prove SEO performance as close to reality as possible. Now, having said this, there's also a new way of proving value of everything that is going on with SEO. Instead of brand versus non-brand analysis, which is common, we now, as SEOs and marketers, have to look at traffic to page types. This is another unique feature of seoClarity, which allows you to see the amount of traffic that's coming into your homepage versus what is going to your categories versus your products. And for typical e-commerce or travel or other sites, there can be hundreds of thousands of products or service pages and tens of thousands of categories. We're able to show you what the traffic breakdown is between these page types. So that as you start optimizing different page types, you can track the impact of it on the traffic, on the conversions, on the value, and be able to measure and report this back. So, of course, there's much more, and we're closely partnering to roll out and build out more of these transition items to help make it a seamless experience for our clients. But it comes down to really to having a very keen sight out into the future and anticipating, just like we did a year ago, anticipated what Google's changes would mean, anticipating what the next changes would be, and making sure our technology is already up to par and is set up to help you address that challenge. So clients will have the ability to transition their brand versus non-brand analysis, understanding long tail performance, issues with targeting that they may have, and much more. So if there are any questions, that was a lot of information to go through. We're happy to take questions, and either Catfish or myself would love to hear from you and address any specific concerns that you have, and how we pull data, and how we're working together to create these integrated solutions which are best of breed and frankly not matched by anything else that's currently out in the marketplace. Thank you.